Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's from Canto 2, Chapter 7, and we have texts 28 and 29 this morning. We're very fortunate to have His Grace Dronacharya Prabhu from ISKCON, Philadelphia, to give a class. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Parikshit Prabhu, all the wonderful devotees of Harrisburg. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Vanchakalpatarubyascha kripasinduvyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hope you're all had a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. What too?
Jai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunā Vanachari. Yamunā Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunā Vanachari. Yamunā Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Śuci-vane Madhava ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajacacharya Ashotatara Śuci-vane His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajacacharya Ashotatara Śuci-vane His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki
Yay.
Dronacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki
Yay.
Prams Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda ki
Yay.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki
Yay.
Shri Vrindavan Dham ki
Yay.
Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki
Yay.
Ganga Maya ki Jamuna
Yay.
Maya ki
Yay.
Bhakti Devi ki
Yay.
Tulsi Devi ki
Yay.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Yay.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki
Yay.
Samaveta Bhakta-vrinda ki
Yay.
Nitai Gora Premanande.
Hari Hari Wo.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namo Om Viṣatoya-pītān Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Tirtha Swamine Namane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shratatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namane Nam Om Viṣatoya-pītān Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamine Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarvi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtuki. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human beings, unto the Goddess of Learning, Mother Saraswati, and unto the author Srila Vyasadeva. By regular attendance in classes in Srimad Bhagavatam, and rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart becomes almost completely destroyed, and devotional service becomes established within one's heart as an irrevocable fact. Continuing our study of the second canto, chapter 7, text number 28 and 29 today. 28 doesn't have a purport, so we'll read this and then we'll go to 29 and then we'll discuss scheduled incarnations of the Supreme Lord. Vraje vraja-paśūn viṣatoya-pītān pālāṁs ajīvayad anugraha-dṛṣṭi-vṛṣṭyā tac-chuddhaye ti-viṣa-vīrya-vilola-jihvam uccāṭayiṣyad uragaṁ viharan hradinyām vraje vraja-paśūn viṣatoya-pītān pālāṁs ajīvayad anugraha-dṛṣṭi-vṛṣṭyā tac-chuddhaye ti-viṣa-vīrya-vilola-jihvam uccāṭayiṣyad uragaṁ viharan hradinyām vraje vraja-paśūn viṣatoya-pītān pālāṁs ajīvayad anugraha-dṛṣṭi-vṛṣṭyā tac-chuddhaye ti-viṣa-vīrya-vilola-jihvam uccāṭayiṣyad uragaṁ viharan hradinyām. Please chant, devotees.
Yahweh vraje vraja-paśūn viṣatoya-pītān pālāṁs ajīvayad anugraha-dṛṣṭi-vṛṣṭyā tac-chuddhaye ti-viṣa-vīrya-vilola-jihvam uccāṭayiṣyad uragaṁ viharan hradinyām. Hare Krishna.
यद्वे व्रजे व्रज-paśūn viṣatoya-pītān pālāṁs ajīvayad anugraha-dṛṣṭi-vṛṣṭyā tac-chuddhaye ti-viṣa-vīrya-vilola-jihvam uccāṭayiṣyad uragaṁ viharan hradinyām. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yadvai vraje vraja-paśūn viṣatoya-pītān pālāṁs ajīvayad anugraha-dṛṣṭi-vṛṣṭyā tac-chuddhaye ti-viṣa-vīrya-vilola-jihvam uccāṭayiṣyad uragaṁ viharan hradinyām. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We'll do the synonyms now. Yat, one who. Vai, certainly. Vraje, at Vrindavan. Vraja-paśūn, the animals thereof. Viṣatoya, poisoned water. Pītān, those who drank. Pālāṁs, the cowherd men. Two, also. Ajīvayad, brought to life. Anugraha-dṛṣṭi, merciful glance. Vṛṣṭyā, by the showers of. That. Chuddhaye, for purification. Ati, exceedingly. Viṣa-vīrya, highly potent poison. Vilola, lurking. Divyam, one who has such a tongue. Uccāṭayiṣyad, severely punished. Uragaṁ, unto the snake. Viharan, taking it as a pleasure. Hradinyām, in the river. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Then also, when the cowherd boys and their family and their animals drank the poisoned water of the river Yamunā, and after the Lord in his childhood revived them by his merciful glance, just to purify the water of the river Yamunā, he jumped into it as if playing and chastised the venomous Kāliya serpent, which was lurking there, its tongue emanating waves of poison. Who can perform such herculean tasks but the Supreme Lord? So there's no purport to this one, so we'll read text 29. I'll just chant the Sanskrit straight through in the translation and purport here. Tat karma divyam ivayan niśyānaṁ dāvāgninā śuci-vane paridahyamāne unneṣyati vajamato vasitānta-kālaṁ netre pidhapya sabalo nadhigamya-vīryaḥ. Translation. On the very night of the day of the chastisement of the Kāliya snake, when the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi were sleeping carefreely, there was a forest fire ablaze due to dry leaves, and it appeared as if all the inhabitants were sure to meet their death. But the Lord, along with Balaram, saved them simply by closing his eyes. Such is the superhuman activities of the Lord. Purport. Although in this verse the Lord's activities has been described as superhuman, it should be noted that the Lord's activities are always superhuman, and that distinguishes him from the ordinary living being. Uprooting a gigantic banyan tree or a June tree and extinguishing a blazing forest fire simply by closing one's eyes are certainly impossible by any kind of human endeavor. But not only are these amazing to hear, but in fact, all other activities of the Lord, whatever he may do, are all superhuman, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Whoever knows the superhuman activities of the Lord, due to their very transcendental nature, becomes eligible to enter the kingdom of Krishna, and, as such, after quitting his present material body, the knower of the transcendental activities of the Lord goes back home, back to Godhead. Om Ajnana-timbarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Pradati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. Then also, when the cowherd boys and their animals drank the poisoned water of the river Yamuna, and after the Lord in his childhood revived them by his merciful glance, just to purify the water of the river Yamuna, he jumped into it, and as if playing, he chastised the venomous Kāliya snake, which was lurking there, its tongue emanating waves of poison. Who can perform such herculean tasks but the Supreme Lord? On the very night of the day of the chastisement of the Kāliya snake, when the inhabitants of Brajbhumi were sleeping carefreely, there was a forest fire ablaze due to the dry leaves, and it appeared that all the inhabitants were sure to meet their death. But the Lord, along with Balaram, saved them simply by closing his eyes. These are very beautiful verses describing the Supreme Lord's superhuman activities. As Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, that actually all of the activities of the Supreme Lord are superhuman. And this is one of the things that distinguishes Krishna in all of his various incarnations from that of the jiva. That is us, all the living beings that come from Krishna. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but we are not the Supreme Lord. When we look at Krishna's activities and the activities of his various incarnations, we have the choice to write it off as, well, this is simply just, mythology. People are kind of making up some stories. The Lord appeared as a boar, dived into the ocean and lifted up the Lord from his tusks and brought it back up into orbit. That the Lord appeared as a huge fish, or that the Lord appeared as a half man, half lion that bursted out of a pillar to save his devotee. Or that the Lord appeared as a human, but performed superhuman activities, like that of when Lord Krishna or Lord Ramchandra. And we see in Lord Krishna's pastimes, especially his childhood pastimes, he's performing, he's lifting mountains, he crawls in between, two Arjun trees and knocks them down. I mean, these huge trees that have been standing for, millions of years. And a little boy, just a couple years old, knocks them down. We have the whirlwind demon, the killing of Putana when he was just a few days old. Over and over again. This isn't just one time that Krishna performs these activities. Over and over again. Krishna does this for his pleasure, but he also does it to instruct us that there's something different about him, that he is not ordinary, he is extraordinary. When we think of God, we shouldn't be surprised. In fact, if God can't do the extraordinary, he wouldn't be God. We can't bring God down to our level. Isn't it God who creates the entire universe? He creates all the various types of species, puts everything into motion. All the laws of nature are enacted ultimately by the original creator, which is him. Puts into motion, into orbit, creator of the various planetary systems, the sun, the moons, all which have intricacy. And then at the very atomic level, he's also performing his perfections of how the different elements work together, or sometimes work in opposite of each other for destruction. Within our own individual bodies, how reproduction takes place, how the senses work and are connected all to the brain just to make us function. This is like a supercomputer that has been created and replicated over and over again in nature. And this is all being done by the Supreme Lord. So when that Supreme Lord, we can't deny that he has the right to enter into this material creation in his personal form and interact with the inhabitants of this world. And Krishna explains in the 4th chapter why he does such. To deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, whenever there's an uprise in irreligious activity, in order to bring back society that becomes misdirected, so they can be redirected toward the real purpose of life, which is understanding the nature of the soul, its relationship with Krishna, its relationship with the material energy and how it is separate from the material energy. And that devotional service to the Supreme is the eternal dharma of the living being. And then to perform that eternal activity while here on earth, so that at the end of one's life, we can go back home, back to Godhead. So there are different philosophies. One philosophy states that, Krishna became God through the process of yoga and meditation, and therefore we should also perform these practices, and we will also become God. That we are spirit, we are Brahman, and we're just covered over Brahman. But once we become uncovered through the process, we can also recognize our quality of Brahman, and we can also become Krishna. So people, when Lord Chaitanya, he met Prakashananda Saraswati and was preaching to him, the Mayavad philosophers, they went to him and they would say, "You look like Narayana." Well, they called everybody Narayana. Everybody was Narayan. And true, it was Lord Chaitanya was Narayan, but he was calling everybody as Narayan, as they see everybody as the Supreme Lord. Vaishnavas understand that there is only one Krishna. Even though he may manifest himself in various ways, there's only one Vishnu Tattva, and there's Jiva Tattva. Jiva Tattva cannot become Vishnu Tattva. And for us to understand this, it is not just that Krishna performed these activities in his adulthood after he became purified, supposedly. No. Krishna performed these activities from his very birth. His birth was extraordinary. His birth was superhuman. And the activities just following his birth, the Trinivarta demon, killing of Putana, as I mentioned before. On and on, we can read in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, as Srila Prabhupada translated into the Krishna book. Krishna's activities are to attract our minds and let us understand that we're not dealing with an ordinary human being. And we can't allow ourselves to minimize Krishna or allow other people, through their own speculations, to minimize Krishna. Try to understand Krishna as he is. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse in the Bhagavad Gita 4:9, which states that Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tac-chuddhaye purnar janma neti mam eti sarjuna. That one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this world, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Liberation from this world is not an easy thing. Srila Prabhupada mentions that in the purport to that verse that we just read from the Bhagavad Gita 4:9. He says it's not an easy thing. Those that want to merge into Brahman, those that want to attain liberation through various mystic processes of yoga or through austerity, it's not very easily awarded. And then even then, there's always the risk of returning back to the material world, because attachment to the object of the spiritual world has not been developed. One simply just wants to separate oneself from the material world. But unless they actually attach themselves to the goal of the spiritual world, which is the Supreme Lord Krishna, then one can very easily fall back again into this material world, because there's a longing that has not been fulfilled. But in this, Krishna also gives a benediction. And we see these benedictions throughout the Bhagavad Gita. That when we surrender to Krishna with love and devotion, when we always think of Krishna and dedicate our lives to Krishna, our minds to Krishna, our intelligence in Krishna, when we act for Krishna, and when we understand the transcendental nature of the body, birth, and activities of the Supreme Lord. This benediction that when we leave this material world, we will attain the eternal abode of Krishna and not return back here to this material world. And Krishna says when one achieves that state, he actually doesn't return back again. As the impersonalist may have the desire because the connection has not been made. The bhakta, or the devotee, due to his transcendental affection and attraction for the service of the Lord, they become fully engaged. And there's no hankering or longing for anything material again. This pastime, it's always important to understand the philosophy before we go into the lila, so that for the purpose of not minimizing the lila or the pastimes, or we take them just as stories that try to, they attract our minds, which is very important, because our minds do need to be attracted. But we want to be fixed in the philosophy so that our minds also don't take us to a place of speculation. So in today's verses, we're talking about Krishna and Vrindavan, and the chastisement of the Kāliya serpent. And this, and in this pastime, we have a snake who was a very powerful snake, one of the snake leaders or snake generals, Kāliya. And Kāliya has a history. There, once in the land of the, I think it was called the Naga Islands, where all the snakes, Nagalaya, there was a big place that was inhabited by many, many serpents. And Kāliya was one of the chiefs on that island. And Lord Vishnu's carrier, Garuda, used to visit there and come to the island and kill a lot of the serpents. You may see in some of these nature shows how birds actually are one of the predators of snakes. They swoop down, the snake doesn't even see it. It gets it between its claws and then flies away. And then in the air, the snake realizes that it is completely helpless. And, then on the ground with its claws, the bird holds down the snake. The snake can't move. It's paralyzed in fear of the grips of the claws. And then with the beak of the bird, it starts plucking away. And the snake realizes that it is, it's gone. It has no hope. It's going to die. But this is that's a natural food for birds. So Garuda would visit, and he would kill and eat many of these serpents. The snakes, in fear, they went to Vashuki, who was their ultimate leader, and they asked Lord Brahma for protection, to please, we're going to be wiped out of existence if Garuda keeps this up. So Lord Brahma approached Lord Vishnu and Garuda, and they made an arrangement that on every half-moon day that the reptile community would make an offer, one serpent to Garuda. And they would keep him underneath of this tree, and Garuda would understand that this was the sacrificial offering to him. And then other than that, he would not disturb the serpents on the island. Now, there's always a renegade. There's always a person who, in every situation, that even if they try to restore order, they try to rise up and disrupt the order. So Kāliya was one of those individuals. And they said, well, why is this? He had been doing his training. He had accumulated a lot of poison and grew many hoods. He became very strong. And so we don't have to give anything to this Garuda. Why do we need to? We should rise up and protest. And so he became very, very strong, very proud, tries to create a following. And when Garuda found out about this, he became very angry, and he went right into the island to kill Kāliya. And Kāliya actually tried to fight Garuda and faced him, showing him his many hoods, his poisonous sharp teeth, ready to attack. But in great anger, Garuda, he swooped down and he struck the body of Kāliya with his effulgent golden wings. Kāliya understood that he had faced, a foe that he wasn't really ready for. And in fear, he fled into the Yamunā River. And there's a river that, it was called, there's a lake in the Yamunā River. It was not right in Vrindavan, it was a little bit further, I believe, upstream from Vrindavan on the Yamunā River. And there's a reason why the Kāliya serpent went there. This is another backstory that we read in the Krishna book. And what had happened was, in addition to the snakes, Lord Garuda would also like to catch fish and eat the fish. So Garuda would go to different rivers and capture fish. One of the rivers was the Yamunā River, and there was a great yogi that resided there that sometimes would meditate under the water. His name was Shubhari Muni, and he was very sympathetic to the fish because he lived under the water most of the time meditating. And when Garuda would swoop down, he would become disturbed by this. And due to his affection to his, aquatic friends, he cursed Garuda and said, from this day forward, if you come here and catch any fish, you will be immediately killed. So he's a powerful yogi, and he cursed Garuda. Now, actually, although a powerful yogi, he was not aware of the transcendental nature, birth, and qualities, the janma and karma of the Supreme Lord, and that Garuda, being an intimate associate of the Supreme Lord, should have been actually treated with the same respect as the Supreme Lord. And therefore, he made a great offense, this yogi. And as a result, he actually fell down. He fell down to a householder as a material sense enjoyer. And this is another instruction about offenses to the pure devotees of the Lord, and how they can be very detrimental. And that even those that pose themselves to be spiritualists, if they are not connected in love with the Supreme Lord, and to the Supreme Lord's devotees, and understanding their transcendental nature, they can also fall down. So there was in this lake where this yogi resided, that curse kind of remained, that Garuda could not come back to that place. And that is why Kāliya took shelter in this lake on the Yamuna. Now, Kāliya, as we mentioned before, had accumulated a lot of strength, and with that, he would poison the water. In fact, this whole area became completely polluted. Polluted with poison, the flames that would come out of Kāliya's mouth. And as a result, all of the water was undrinkable, and those that drank the water would die, fall sick and die. And in fact, all the trees, the vegetation that lived around the water, the aquatics in the water, they would also die just to the proximity of the pollution created by this, this snake. So Krishna, seeing the disturbance that had been created there, understanding who Kāliya was and why Kāliya resided there, he had to protect his land, protect the devotees. So Kāliya, performing his mischief and disrupting, creating the pollution in the river Yamunā. In fact, they said even if birds flew over top, they would just drop dead due to the pollution. Actually, I saw this one time. We had, I work with a water department, and we have this, we have our plants where we treat the water. And one time there was a chemical spill at one of our plants. Now, these are all airborne. These are gaseous chemicals that get injected into the water in very small amounts. But one time there was a leak that got into the air. I believe it was ammonia. It may have been I forget which one it was. I believe it was ammonia. But anyway, there were birds that flew above and they just died. They just nosedived right down because it was like they were flying low. As soon as they hit this plume of air, of toxic air, they just nosedived right down. So this is what was happening. They would go over this poison, this air that Kāliya had created, and they just died. So Krishna, seeing this, he climbed up on one of these trees, and there's only a tree that was still living. He was ready to attack Kāliya. In fact, it's funny how it's described that he, tightened up his dhoti, and he slapped his arms as if he's getting ready to go into battle, and he dove into the water. And when he dove into water, it created such a splash that Kāliya understood that somebody was here to challenge him. And Kāliya immediately grabbed Krishna and wrapped his coils around Krishna and started to squeeze. Now, Krishna didn't seem like a very formidable opponent to Kāliya. He was a young boy at the time. Now, the residents of Vrindavan who came to see Krishna, the cowherd boys, those that were still living from not being poisoned by the deadly waters of the Yamunā in this area, they were in fear of their life. The splash that Krishna created was so great that it was heard by the different Brajbasis. They heard what was going on, so they came running, and then they saw the footprints of Lord Krishna, and they knew that Krishna may be in danger. So they all came down to the river. And when they saw Krishna wrapped in the coils of the serpent, they started to faint themselves. And then Krishna, seeing the distress of his beloved devotees, understood now it was time to show them once again his miracle of killing another demon. So Krishna started to expand himself, and in doing so, he loosened the grip. He started to exhaust the grip of the Kāliya serpent. When a snake wraps around its prey, it squeezes it and it holds it into place, paralyzing the prey, restricting the air and blood flow within, the prey that it is attacked. But in this case, Kāliya serpent started getting exhausted. And because of that, it had to loosen the grip upon Krishna. And then Krishna, climbing upon the various heads of the Kāliya serpent, started to dance and kick the Kāliya serpent on top of the head. And the Kāliya serpent became more and more furious. And due to its anger, started to shoot fire, each time avoiding Lord Krishna, as Krishna continued to dance on the hoods, one after the other, of the Kāliya serpent. To the point where the Kāliya serpent started understanding that it was losing strength, it's becoming tired. Now, with the Kāliya also came his family, and the wives of Kāliya, called they began to pray to Lord Krishna, and these prayers are very beautiful prayers. One of them states that it stated their confusion. They said, due to his sinful activities in a previous life, Kāliya was born as a snake. But we don't understand how it is that a person who has been so sinful in their past to achieve this body that is meant to harm others is now being touched by the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These feet are unattainable by those who undergo intense meditation, austerity, and acquire knowledge. They can only be attained by those with pure loving devotion. So this is our confusion. And they go on, and understanding the prayers of the wives of Kāliya. And after Lord Krishna had defeated Kāliya, out of compassion for them, he made an agreement with the Kāliya serpent and his family that you need to leave this place and never come back again. And he also promised Kāliya's protection from Garuda. So Kāliya had become transformed by he wasn't killed, but he was transformed by the mercy of the Lord. And this mercy came from the Lord's strength. The Lord had to beat him down literally. But in doing so, it shows also that the Lord's mercy comes in various ways. Sometimes it comes with the kick in the head, or the punishment, or the humility, that becoming humbled by the Lord. Kāliya was quite proud. He was quite angry. And in doing so, the Lord had to subdue him, subdue his pride, subdue his anger, and withdraw his strength because it was misused. Sometimes the Lord's mercy comes from the front in a very pleasing, seemingly pleasing way. But oftentimes in this material world, that needs to come sometimes in the form of the Lord, humiliating the devotee to check their pride. So after this had taken place, those that had been affected by the poisonous waters were revived. The water, by the touch of Lord Krishna, had become purified once again. And the cows, the calves, the aquatics, they could now enjoy the waters of the Yamunā River. Seeing this activity, everybody was in amazement and started to chant Krishna's name. Except there was one person throughout this whole ordeal, when Krishna was, appeared to be in distress in the coils Lord Balaram the whole time was laughing, understanding that this was just Krishna at play and that Krishna was going to be victorious. He was smiling where everybody else was crying and in distress. Lord Balaram is the supreme personality of Godhead in service. He understood the mood and the mission of Lord Krishna. So that night, when all the residents of Vrindavan, they were resting very peacefully, Krishna had been saved. Krishna is the hero. They were just, nothing could touch them. They could sleep very peacefully. A forest fire broke out. So one after another, these calamities came again and again. And Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram were there to protect. And whenever fear would arise within the hearts of the Vrajbasis, Krishna and Balaram were there to save the day, intensifying their love for the Supreme Lord. So these are some of the pastimes we can read about in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Krishna book. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments, reflections from the devotees. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dronacharya, please accept my humble obeisances, all grace of Prabhupada.
Hare
I'm
Krishna.
jumping in for friction. But such a
Yes.
wonderful class. It's always so nice to hear the pastimes. As you were speaking about the Krishna book, I was remembering that, my goodness, we are like, 3 months or so away from Janmashtami. So this is really nice and relishing pastimes. Would like to ask devotees if you can please, this is the time for questions. You are welcome to either raise your hand or jump right in with your questions, and so that we can really start our week off with a lot of nectar for us to meditate on. Drona, I have a question while others are thinking. Is there's one statement you made that had me thinking, I never thought of it that way. And it's so nice, sometimes Krishna always arranges for us to hear classes every day on verses that we may have heard of before, but it depends on the speaker, and what nectar they add to it. But there's a point that you made in your class about we are not spiritually matured to be attached to the spiritual world. Something like that you said, right? And that really made me think about the phrase that you use, spiritually matured. So my question, Dronacharya, is how can we become or have the desire or the interest, I think is the word, interest before the desire, I don't know, to get that the spiritual maturity to be attached to the spiritual. What does it mean to be spiritually mature?
We follow the directions of our spiritual master. That we understand that we are servants of Krishna, and what that means for us also is servants of the pure devotee of Krishna, the representative of Krishna. So that's one thing, that we're not independent. We're disciples. And in that discipleship, we understand that our life is for the pleasure of the Lord, and to be engaged in the service of the Lord. And furthermore, having the vision that every other living being in this world is on their path back home, back to Godhead. And therefore the treatment of those living beings should be done with a vision of service to Krishna. And when we have this realization and apply it, the qualities that one exhibits is that of tolerance, forgiveness, gratitude, humility, detachment. In other words, they're unaffected by the troubles of this world. They're unaffected emotionally and mentally, even though physically they still may be affected in some way. But emotionally and mentally, they're spiritually, they're engaged. They're absorbed in Krishna. So there's some of the ways, that we're mature. You know, uh, does that help? I'm sure there may be some other ways that we could pull out as well.
Wonderful, Drona, because I think everything starts with the spiritual master. So that was a very nice reminder that you shared with us how important it is to follow the guru's instructions, because I think we come across situations, where one gets initiated or is aspiring, but once they get initiated, especially, then that connection with the spiritual master is not very strong, but because of the ego, we think that we got it made. So I think the importance of Vaidhi Bhakti, I think, is the key point here, that once we keep doing that, that we start developing that spiritual maturity. Because I think once one gets spiritually mature, they're very aloof, I'm thinking, from the material world, right, Rona? Like they don't, they have no interest.
Hmm.
Like, there's no attachment.
Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, these are things that don't happen like, so easily for us because our attachments are so great. So we see this
Yeah.
take place gradually within us. The best way to look at it is, when we look at other devotees, sometimes we can't necessarily see the changes in ourselves, but when we're around devotees, we can see the changes in them, and it's good to point them out and celebrate those advancements. The devotee that you've been seeing, serving with for 10 years or 20 years, and you say, wow, you see that devotee? Wow, they've really, matured, or they've really, um, you know, they used to be, kind of a loose cannon, or they used to be all over the place. Now they're steady. Um, and we can see these growths, from a day to day. You can't really see the changes so much in one's own self. But reflecting back on our lives too, we can see, hopefully we can see some positive changes of growth. And if we can't, that's an indication that we're not doing things properly. That we're not really following the formula, because we should see a decrease in our life of, lust, anger, greed, and the symptoms that manifest from lust, anger, and greed. And we should see, understanding, love, peace, humility grow in our lives. And this happens because we become back in contact with Krishna. More so we can see Krishna's hand in everything. And we're accepting of that. We celebrate that. Krishna's hand is there, and it becomes a very wonderful thing to see. We learn to see that Krishna is protecting me and guiding me. When we see these things, it makes a difference in our lives. It affects us. for sure.
Thank you so much, Dronacharya. It's really powerful. That we really meditate on this, and I think you made a very good point that it's very hard to check ourselves or see whether we're growing or not. But definitely, it helps when we take shelter of or guidance, as you said, from senior devotees and spiritual master and elders to help us grow spiritually, so that we become attached to the spiritual world. I just really liked how you put that whole sentence together, that we're not spiritually mature, therefore we're not attached to the spiritual world, we're attached to the material world. And that makes me check myself and think, how much am I attached to this material world, and how much do I really want Krishna and to be with him? So that was a very nice point. Thank you, Dronacharya. Very powerful.
Hare
I
Krishna.
think there is oh, that's Nupur. Okay. Are there any other questions from devotees? Please do raise your hand or ask a question. This is such a wonderful topic for us to meditate on, and and it's nice to get these kind of classes, especially from Dronacharya, the beginning of the week, to help us meditate on. If you have any thoughts, please do raise your hand. And just going down the list to make sure that I don't miss any hands raising. If there isn't, Rona, wait, did I miss something? No, okay, I thought my eyes were playing games. If there isn't, Dronacharya, thank you for giving us food for thought. I know for me, the takeaway is how to develop spiritual maturity. That's definitely my food for thought. And I request devotees, to please meditate on this class. And if you have to hear it again, it's on YouTube. Please go back and hear it. Thank you, Dronacharya, for such a wonderful class. And we thank the devotee. Yes, Dear Krishna, I have to agree. It's a beautiful class. Thank you. And we thank all the devotees for joining us. Vanchakraptibhyascha, kripasindobevacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Dronacharya. Hari Hari Bo.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful Krishna conscious day.
You too. Wonderful Krishna conscious day.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.